The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Welcome to Planting Seeds, Philanthropy in Saskatchewan, a show where we aim to connect you to the donors and charities making an impact across the prairies. I'm your host, Victor Roman Morrow of the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm happy to welcome Anne Perry to the show today. Anne Perry is the Executive Director of the Circle Project, which is a very incredible organization. And I won't go through the worry of describing it. I thought I'd let Anne do that herself. So welcome to the show, Anne.
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm very glad to have you. And yeah, I just thought, could you let us know a bit about yourself and the organization itself?
Sure. First of all, a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Regina, good old Regina girl. Took a trip to Saskatoon for a few years and then made our way back to Regina again. So most of my life has been spent here in our fine city. And I have family and a busy life and a busy job. And my job for the last 29 years has been with the Circle Project. So the Circle Project is an Indigenous organization that celebrated its 35th anniversary in 2023, January. Oh, wow. Yeah, January 18th, 2023. So over the years, currently, I'll tell you what we have currently. We have the Circle Project Children's Center, the Infant Toddler Center, so those are two off-site locations. And a couple of years ago, we took on a huge project, actually 3 years ago, to move closer to the community we serve. And we engaged with Connexus, had a donation of a building, and we created the Circle Project Community and Cultural Hub right in North Central Regina.
Great. And that hub, it's a pretty fascinating place. I haven't had a chance to visit it yet. I know some of my colleagues have, and I'm planning to get there. But can you tell us a bit about that project? Like, how did it come to be that you were donated this building, and what have you done with that building?
So there was a Connexus a few years ago had closed down several of its community branches, and they wanted to do something important for the community because they've been very good supporters of the community for many, many years. And so rather than selling off the buildings, they put out an RFO for a request for offers, and we responded to it. And already at that time, as part of our strategic planning process, we had looked at an upcoming move. We didn't really know, it was going to be within the next 5 years. And we were just looking at locations. So we were doing a lot of the research on, where's our best location, where are our services most needed, and where could we make the largest impact. And so it came fairly obvious, fairly quickly, that North Central Regina was the area that most of our program participants were coming from. So we looked at that area, and we'd already started the process of looking at buildings that were available. So the timing of this was perfect, and we responded to the request for offers, fully intending to purchase the building because we had already, as I said, we were looking for a permanent home for the Circle Project. For the adult programs, we'd already established that for the two children's programs. So the timing was really good, and we put in the request for offers, and they donated the building to us, much to our delight and gratitude and surprise. So what that enabled us to do was really think big on and plan for the future, rather than having to move in and think about, oh darn, like, how are we going to cover the programs now, because we've made this huge investment in this building. And we wanted to find a permanent site for the Circle Project Hub. The services there are really important for the community, and it's an important presence in the community, particularly for the large numbers of Indigenous people that use our services and the large number of Indigenous people that are employed by our organization. So our move into the Connexus building, we were able to then start planning on we need to look at what do we need in the future. So what are the programs going to look like? What is our work going to look like? Not necessarily just now, but 5 years from now. And we were fortunate to apply for grants, and we were successful in securing grants, which then gave us the ability to create the Circle Project Community and Cultural Hub.
Oh,
And
great.
yeah, it's great.
And within that hub, like, what are some of the things that if someone's to walk in there, that they can find or that they can access?
Well, there's 4 main parts of the hub. The first part is the area where we've got the offices and services, and people can make programs, appointments to register for programs. Our administrative area is there as well. But we also have a lunch program and for food security, obviously, and an outreach program as well. So the first aspect of the work we do is working with the most vulnerable in our community and addressing issues like housing, food security, even having personal care and personal hygiene items. When you're living rough, those things are really important. The second part of it is the programs and services that we provide in the community. So currently it's family violence. We work with offenders, and that's even though it's not the most popular avenue to take in working with family violence, we'll never break those cycles of violence unless we work with the victims and the offenders and the entire family and the community that's affected by it. So we work with exclusively with the female offenders that are coming through the courts as well. We work in housing, so we're looking at housing individuals, helping individuals find and secure homes. And helping them stay housed, because this is important. It's the staying house that's important. And so how do you do that? You do that by providing those supports and having that inclusion and having a place where someone can come in and have a lunch if they're having a bit of a down day or a bit of a rough day, and just have somewhere safe to be, culturally and emotionally safe to be. And so that's the second part of the programs. We also have a program that we work in partnership, actually with Regina Work Prep. It's to help young people that are on their way back to engaging in the economy through employment. So we work in partnership with them. They deliver the job services and we deliver the cultural services. And it's just been a great partnership that we've had. So that's the program and service side. And of course, the 2 daycares that are off-site, which includes parent nights for the building cultural competencies and cultural connections for kids. The third part of it is the community engagement. So it's the special events that we do in the community, and we have a big community room. And so we share that with other organizations. Currently, we're sharing it with a youth group that has found themselves actually quite homeless because their former location was not available to them anymore. And rather than seeing them stop the programming, we said, hey, our building is open. You can come over. And that's been great, because then, we know that those kids that are involved in that program are in that safe place for that period of time. And then the fourth, and then we've got the area around the community partnerships, and how do we develop those community partnerships? How do we look at long-term impacts in the community? How is it that we engage with community partners? So we've got a couple of events coming up, Hearts in the Park, which we started 6 years ago, I believe, to raise levels of awareness about family violence. Well, Family Service Regina is now our new partner starting this year. So we're really excited about that. That'll be happening in May. And it's something that it just brings the community together and different aspects of the community. So we're really interested in creating space to have those important conversations and to give people an opportunity to talk about the things that are really going on in their life, and it doesn't have to be in the shadows anymore.
So what I gathered from all that is you're very busy.
A little bit.
A little bit
A
busy.
little bit.
But there's so many, your list, honestly, it just goes like on and on and on and on and on. But it really, what it shows me is that your organization, I think through your leadership, is that you're really paying attention to what the community needs and responding, and you're not afraid to respond. And I know that that's a pretty big challenge. And it's really, I think it's pretty incredible to see some of that work that the Circle Project's been able to do. And as you mentioned, just like when someone walks through your doors, the amount of things that they're potentially able to access, depending on their needs, depending on the care that they need, is huge. And on that, like, you know, and you mentioned having this all in this hub. What kind of changes, or what have you really seen happen to the people that are walking through your doors? Like, how has it been different in the new location, maybe from before?
Well, in the previous location, people would come in to register for the program. We've always had an area where someone could come in and use a phone, read a newspaper. You know, if we had food, we would share whatever we had. But we didn't have any formal programming around that. If a person came in with needs, we would try and help as best as we could. But we weren't street front. You know, we were more in an industrial area, and we weren't in a neighborhood like we are now. So we've always had that welcoming spirit at the project, and that's, you know, culturally that's appropriate. But the biggest change that we've seen is that we want to help, you know, those that are the most vulnerable. Help them regain their self-respect and dignity. And how do we do that? We remember their names when they come in. We start talking to them about, you know, they start talking to us about their families and what their current situation is. And a lot of time, because sometimes there are so many barriers in people's way, there's not a lot of trust there. And so when we've got that ability to have no strings attached, come in and have a lunch. And then people start, you know, staying a little bit longer at the front counter and having a little bit of a visit, and or sitting down and having their lunch there. And then they start talking about, you know, I think I need to see a counselor, or, you know what, I'm living at someone else's house and I'm not safe there. So once we've got that relationship, they'll start talking about the things that are going on. And, you know, the ability to use a phone, like, where can you use a phone anywhere? It's so important. We've had instances where our Regina Police Service has been, you know, on the street with someone because they've had to have a conversation, or someone's been a victim of crime, and they've actually come in and said, do you have a room that we could talk to this individual, because we don't feel comfortable talking to them on the street. And so we've been able to do that as well, you know, really provide that. So we don't really know what's going to happen day to day. We know what we're ready for, but we're not really sure of what's going to happen every day. So it's just that ability to welcome people and to have that inclusion, and to really understand that the circumstances that people are in are the things that are happening to them. They're not necessarily, that's not who the person is. And we see that. And I think that's one of the most important pieces in the work that we do, in that outreach work. It's that safe place that people can come. And it's really, you know, we're privileged to be able to do that. The community has welcomed us, and, you know, in a very short period of time, I think we've become an important part of that community structure.
One of the things you said there that really struck me is just that there's a lot of truth, I think, to that. You know, you don't know, I can't remember exactly the words you said, but you kind of said, like, you know, like, you don't know what to expect day to day. Like, you don't know what's going to walk through your doors. You're not sure what the need is going to be. And the needs of community change too, right? So what I really want to focus on for a bit is, and maybe I'll preface this a bit, is around the idea of, you know, how does an organization be flexible? How does funding help organizations be flexible? And for the audience's view, if people have watched, you know, a few episodes of this, they probably heard me talk about our organization's Vital Signs report. It's online. It's a tool at growingfuturesreport.ca. And what it does is it outlines the emergent needs that are facing our community right now. And you're familiar with it because you're in the report. And that's part of the reason why we're having this conversation is there was an interesting note that kept coming out of all of the charities that were surveyed, and in data we were looking at, you know, the funding that people are receiving and the support that they're receiving isn't necessarily compatible with the needs that they're actually dealing with. And, you know, and that goes from another example from the report is, you know, Canadian Mental Health Association, Weyburn, again, doing great work, doing really good work. And I want to stress this, like, the charitable sector does really good work with the very limited resources they have. But a lot of times, if they were able to not only have more resources, but also direct them a little bit differently and have a little bit more freedom to how they could direct them, they could have a bigger impact. And what I don't know if all the viewers might understand, but generally, and you can correct me if this is a little bit different for how you work, but generally in the charitable sector, a lot of times when you're seeking funding, there's a lot of like very specific ways you can use that funding. So if you get funding from one grant, it means that that grant is only for one program, only for maybe one staff, maybe it doesn't cover staff at all. There might be restrictions like you can't use transportation, things like that. So it kind of pigeonholes people into having to do a certain thing with the funds they have. But what that also means is that, if a funding opportunity exists that's only giving towards one thing, it's also encouraging a charity to only try to do that one thing. But what we're hearing a lot from the charitable sector, and we're seeing it a lot more at our foundation as we go forward, is finding more ways to just listen to the charitable sector, listen to the people that have the boots on the ground that are working directly with people in need, and understanding what is actually coming through their door every day, and how can, if I'm a donor, how can my dollars go even further if I give them more flexibility so they can address those needs. And you had an interesting story, I think, a bit about being able to adapt and be flexible that was in the report around your food security program. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe telling us a bit about that, and we can focus a bit more on, how can we shift the way we look at the way charities run.
And those are really important questions, and I appreciate the fact that we are having this conversation because, people want to help. People are generous, especially people in Saskatchewan. We help each other, we stick together. If there's a need in the community, we try and address the need. We have a really good understanding of hardship, and we respond to that and I say as a community, and I'm talking the broader community, when it comes to a narrower view. And so, I look at specifically our work with the project in the hub, the story that I shared, and I think it just demonstrates so clearly what the need is. So we had our programs that we were coming into the hub with, our family violence program, and we have specific criteria on that. The 2 daycare centers, we have specific criteria. The housing program, we have specific criteria. But what was happening, we opened our doors, and of course we had the individuals coming in to register for the programs, but we also had people that were coming in, and we knew they were among the most vulnerable citizens, asking if we had anything to eat. And in this day and age, that there's that level of hunger that, you as a stranger, so just think about this, that you would have to be in the position that you'd have to have the courage to walk into a place you've never walked in before and say, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Do you have any food? And, that really tugged at our heartstrings, and we really weren't prepared for that. We knew that there was issues in the community, but that was something that was so obvious, and it's basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, right? And so food is the first among those. And so we started giving away our own lunches, and then pretty soon the staff were bringing 6 lunches a day for each person because because I knew I had groceries, so I'm going to make some extra lunches, and that's what we started doing. And then as a staff, we realized that this is that's not sustainable. We can't do that. So we need to take a look at, can we do something a bit better? So then we chipped in, because we all work, and so we chipped in and bought some bread and bought some meat and cheese and a few apples and oranges and fruit and water, and said, okay, we're going to make some lunches now. And then one of the contractors actually caught wind of this and said, well, I'll help out with that. I'll throw in a few bucks. And so that's how it started. It started real grassroots level. And quickly we knew that we wanted our food security program, our lunch program, to be by the community and for the community. We knew that this would be a great place where if people want to be able to do something to help, there's some real basic needs that are being met here. So I can give you an example. So in the first, in March of 2022, when we did, 2023, we gave away 95 lunches. And then from April 1st of 2023 to March 31st of 2024, that number is skyrocketed. So we're up to, I think it's 38,000 lunches now.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's
That
lots.
is a lot, yeah.
And so thankfully, we, through the generosity of the community, people, you know, corporations said, hey, we heard about your lunch program, here's a donation.
Yeah.
And then volunteers started coming out. And so that's how we've managed that program. You know, it's really important, you know, if people want to, that's just an example. If people want to give, there's one example. But we would not have been able to respond to that need in the community, that important need in the community that really has created this gateway for people to start coming in and talking about what's going on and then saying, you know what, I think I need to go to a program, or I think I need to go to treatment, or this is what's happening, or I'm sick and tired of being this, you know, I'm sick and tired of living this way. And so we were able to pivot and turn really quickly. And that's the beauty of the sector. We can respond to the needs in the community. We need the resources to be able to do that. But it's building that trust. And so, you know, an organization like ours that's been around for 36 years, and someone the other day said, you know, whether it's a business or a company that is around for that many years, you're obviously doing something right. So, you know, and you've earned the trust of the community. So in the corporate sector, you have that reputation. That doesn't necessarily fall true into the nonprofit sector, because it's, you know, it's meeting the needs that are established under policy, and so it's a little bit different. But it's that you know, they're not unsecured resources, because we secure them. We have an audit. We take, you know, we have policies and procedures in place that the transparency, the accountability, that we hold ourselves to those standards. And we look at the standards through, you know, the government or corporations branch or some of the funders as a minimum standard. We exceed those standards. We go above and beyond. So when we've got those funds, that we've got that flexibility, we can respond to the needs that are occurring right in front of us. And we don't have to, a lot of times with the whole funding cycle, as you know, there's months. There's months that can transpire between when you've actually first put in a proposal to when you finally get $1. So, you know, something like a food security program, it's needed right now.
And that's where I think what you've done is really important. I want to kind of hit on two things. There's one thing, and you kind of mentioned this, but I really want to highlight it, is that, you know, an organization like yours, as you mentioned, like you weren't and you are not like a food bank, but people came in with a basic need. People came into a place where they could now get a basic like nourishment in time, especially in a time where food insecurity is increasing rapidly as prices go up. So, you know, people in vulnerable situations come in for that meal. They suddenly have a place where they feel safe. If they have other issues at home, as you mentioned, they are already comfortable going into a place that then they now just have to have one more conversation of. It's like, it's actually creating a system where it's making it more accessible for people in need to ask for need, because they already feel valued, they already feel welcome. And I think that that's something that can be hard to kind of compute, but I think that is huge. It's like when you come in and someone's with no judgment, with a smile on their face, is willing to feed you, to talk to you, to hear about your day, it's like that's the first step to that person then letting you into their lives. And like you said, if they want to change their lives, feeling like they might have a vehicle to actually do so now, and not feeling as hopeless. So I think that's huge. The other part of it I just wanted to really hit on, as you mentioned, is that, you know, not every organization can be that flexible. As you mentioned, you've got, was it over 30 years of that trust built in the community,
36 now,
and the relationships built. But I think, and the terms that we use, and I don't know if it's the most accessible, but there's like restricted funding, which is like this funding needs to be used in a very specific way, or unrestricted funding, which often can be used in any way the organization needs. So that comes down to, you know, if you need to, like salaries, benefits, the building that you're in, or programming, like literally just anything with no bounds. And what we've seen is that, you know, the more access to unrestricted funding, it lets that situation where if you have that pocket of funding that you have some wiggle room with, that when people start to come through the door and they need food, that you're ready for them. Because as you mentioned, to get ready for them would be, okay, we got to come up with a program, we got to try to figure out how we're going to do this, then we got to apply for funding, then 5 months later we're going to get the funding. A year has gone past, and there's a lot of hungry people that need your help that aren't getting it right now. So having access to that flexibility just means people are going to get served better right now. It lets an organization like yours or any other charity think more about the long-term sustainability too, and what they need not only today, but also tomorrow, and plan ahead. And I think that that's really, really valuable. And I think, a story like yours, I'd hope that somebody looking to give would understand, I think, the importance of that relationship and that trust to build with an organization. And also to just trust people that, if someone wants to try something new and it doesn't go perfect, it's okay, because you're letting them innovate. You're letting them figure out ways to better work with the people they're working with. In a case like this, it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, it works, it's working well, and it's actually increasing your other services, I think, as a result of it, which is huge. So I love that story just because it really illustrates so strongly the importance of that flexibility and the real impact it can have.
And I love the story, but what I love more is the people and what it's created for our organization. Because what it's created for our organization is an opportunity for us to get to really know the community and, really talk to people and build those relationships. And it has brought so much richness to the organization. So that we look at, we started off to help with food security. And what this has turned into is something that's completely different. I want to touch on something, though, with this unrestricted funding. So it's not just about programming. So things like, in the corporate sector, as an example, and some in the larger charities, there's lots of money for social media. Here's your website, and here's this, and here's, and then you hire a firm to be able to do that. Well, who funds that? We're coming around the corner for our first strategic plan in our new hub since we built it. And yet in other sectors, strategic planning is essential to that long-term service. What are you going to be doing? What does the future look like? How do we get there? That goal setting is so important. And yet, if the money is to house people, you cannot use it to talk about, well, 5 years from now, what does this look like? So that's the other thing that we do with the unrestricted funding. It's not necessarily just into the programming, but it's into helping to build that infrastructure for the organization so it can be around for many years to come, providing those important services in the community.
I'm glad you touched on that, because that is a really, really important note, is that, like, as you mentioned, it's not as tangible maybe to say, if I give money for strategic planning, but the reality is a better strategy is going to have better outcomes for the long-term view. And we have to wrap things up, unfortunately. I want to keep talking for another hour, but I really want to just say thank you for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it. And maybe just as we go, can you let people know how they can find the Circle Project if someone's looking as a place to, give to or be involved with?
Certainly. So we do have our website. It's circleproject.ca. Canada Helps, we're listed on Canada Helps. We've actually had people walk in with donations as well. And so we accept those donations. So you can donate online. You can go to Canada Helps. You can come into the project. And then, there are a lot of companies are looking to have something for their volunteers to do in the community. So 38,000 sandwiches, that's how many we've made in the last year so far. That's a lot of hands, that's a lot of sandwiches. So every Monday and every Thursday, that's what we're doing. So just take an interest in something that speaks to you as far as in the charitable sector, and support it, more than, like, financial support is really important. Because it gives the organization the opportunity on your behalf to make a huge difference in the community. So we encourage everyone to give.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Anne.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about how you can make an impact in your own community, visit us online at sscf.ca or find us on social media at South Saskatchewan Community Foundation on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today.